The tale opens beside a calm lake, where a young boy named Alex relaxes with his fishing rod. A mysterious sorcerer called Elders approaches him and offers to teach him magic. Curious Alex agrees, and their training begins. To start, Elders sets up a target and instructs Alex to focus. He weaves a vivid scenario, making Alex imagine a dire situation where he must use magic to protect his friends. Driven by determination, Alex conjures a ring of fire. With Elders guiding him to stay composed, he releases the fireball, striking the target successfully. Proud of his accomplishment, Alex admits the spell was challenging, but Elders reminds him that most people need a month to learn what Alex managed in a single day. Excited, Alex wants to continue, but his mentor insists he rest and return to fishing. Though Alex feels dissatisfied, Elders reassures him that his talent will naturally make him a great magician. Alex wonders aloud if he even needs a teacher, but Elders avoids the question. Their quiet moment is broken when Elders struggles with the fish on his line. Laughing at his mentor's lack of skill, Alex helps him reel it in. Together they collapse from the effort, then share a joyful laugh as the fish flops beside them. The following day, Elders gives Alex a book filled with magical formulas, but the boy struggles to grasp it. Patiently, Elders begins explaining the patterns and symbols. Day after day, they study together, until one winter afternoon when snow begins to fall. Alex playfully tosses a snowflake at Elders, sparking a lighthearted snowball fight. Their happiness doesn't last long, however. Elders eventually announces that he will be leaving for the capital in the summer. Saddened, Alex asks why he won't stay. Elders warns him never to become a court magician, but when Alex presses for answers, Elders reveals that he only trained him as a way to honor the kindness shown by Alex's late mother. With those words, he leaves Alex behind. Years later, Alex enrolls at the Royal Magic Academy. While reviewing old records, he discovers that Elders once graduated as the Academy's top student and went on to serve as a court magician, only to be later exiled. Outraged by the injustice, Alex vows to enter the court himself and reform it in Elders' honor. In time, he achieves his goal and becomes a court magician under Crown Prince Regulus's party. However, after a grueling battle, the prince dismisses him. Shocked, Alex demands to know why. Regulus challenges him to explain his role in the party. Alex insists his duty is to support the prince with magic, but Regulus rebukes him, pointing out that he failed to fulfill that role in their recent fight. The prince explains that he leads from the front as a swordsman. Their mage Lenny unleashes devastating spells, and Ix shields them from harm. But Alex's support magic contributes nothing meaningful. When Alex tries to defend his approach, Regulus cuts him off, accusing him of weakness. Lenny joins in, mocking Alex for his cautious nature and confessing she only tolerated him because Regulus allowed it. With both Lenny and Ix siding against him, Regulus declares that he once believed Alex's reputation as a top graduate, but now suspects he only bribed his way into success. Once again, Alec tries to defend himself, but Regulus notices a dagger on his belt and seizes it. The prince scolds him, declaring that commoners have no right to carry weapons. Alec explains that he only kept it for self-defense, but Regulus furiously grabs his collar, calling commoners foolish for never following orders. Stripped of confidence, Alec stays silent as Regulus tears the robe from his shoulders, saying he is unworthy of the court magician's title. Humiliated and shaken, Alec watches as the party heads into the dungeon without him. Determined to protect the prince despite his dismissal, Alec studies the dungeon on his own. Knowing that Regulus lacks the magical power to survive the threats beyond level 30, Alec rushes to the capital and begs the royal guards to let him in. They deny him entry, reminding him that he lost his position and that commoners are forbidden inside. As they argue, Lenny emerges, ridiculing Alec once more. She mocks the rumors about him reaching level 67, accusing him of fabricating stories to make himself look strong. When Alec pleads with her to deliver a scroll to Regulus, she smirks, tears it apart in front of him, and coldly orders the guards to remove him. Heartbroken, Alec wanders back to town, weighed down by the thought that 4 years of sacrifice had changed nothing. While lost in despair, Alec unexpectedly encounters Yora, his former party leader. Overcome with emotion, she embraces him, and they sit together as Alec recounts his struggles. Outraged at the unfairness of the Galana Kingdom's court, Yora vents about their obsession with keeping nobles and commoners apart. Though Alec worries someone might overhear, Yora reassures him they are alone and reminds him of her promise to one day bring him back to her team. She smiles and invites him to rejoin her party, insisting that she and her comrades have been waiting for his return. Alec, overwhelmed with tears, protests that the court declared him useless. Yora laughs it off, telling him his worth has never depended on the court's judgment. Holding his hands, she welcomes him back to her high-ranked adventurer group, Lasting Period. Alec feels joy and relief at being reunited with his old companions. Later, as they travel home, Alec drifts asleep in the carriage and dreams of Elder's warning never to join the royal court. Awakened, he reflects somberly that Elder's words had come true. Yora notices his unease, but Alec keeps his thoughts to himself. Meanwhile, in the royal capital, Prince Regulus hears from Lenny that Alec has left the kingdom to become an adventurer. Instead of regret, Regulus sneers, mocking Alec as a coward who once claimed to be the greatest genius of the Magic Academy. Meanwhile, Lenny proposes a toast to celebrate the arrival of their newest member, a gifted magician from the prestigious Duke Fornius family. Regulus accepts the drink, sipping proudly as Lenny flatters him, imagining that together they'll dominate the dungeon. The prince, tipsy and arrogant, laughs loudly at the thought of their inevitable glory. Far away, Alec and Yora finally return to their hometown of Fizzle. Surrounded by adventurers, Alec feels comforted by the bustling energy, while Yora excitedly tells him about their next plan, to challenge a dungeon west of the city. Before they can set out, she insists on registering Alec at the Adventurers Guild. At the guild, however, the receptionist informs them that only those registered for 2 years can obtain the license needed to explore beyond level 30. Yora is frustrated, especially when she learns their comrade Kra previously tried to bully the guild into handing out a license, leaving her embarrassed. Later, over a simple meal, Yora vents about the setback. They can't afford to wait years before reaching the 52nd floor, but after finishing her sandwich, she regains her optimism. For now, she suggests they tackle smaller dungeons as a warm-up. Cheered by her determination, Alec agrees. Soon after, they step into a dungeon swarming with monstrous insects. Yora casts protective magic on Alec, who charges forward and slashes through the creatures. Though pleased with their teamwork, Yora notes that the dungeon seems unusually difficult. As more bugs swarm in, Alec realizes that something deeper inside must have disturbed them. Confident, Yora continues forward, but Alec warns her it's too dangerous. She laughs, reminding him that he was never the type to retreat from monsters, and urges him to trust her judgment. Torn between fear and loyalty, Alec recalls that he is no longer bound by the restrictions of the royal court. Drawing on his strength, he channels his magic, and Yora watches as he unleashes a roaring fire spell that incinerates the swarm. Just as relief sets in, another wave of bugs closes in. Working together, Yora raises a powerful shield, while Alec conjures a thunderous magic circle, summoning a devastating lightning strike that wipes the creatures out. Before they can rest, a colossal worm bursts from the ground and seizes Yora in its jaws. Alec instantly realizes this monster is the cause of the chaos. With Yora trapped, he reminds her of her unmatched support magic, while she reassures him of his offensive might. Combining their strength, Alec summons a blazing dragon with the spell Blazing Tornado. The fiery beast engulfs the worm, reducing it to ash and freeing Yora from danger. Safe again, Yora rushes to Alec and praises him as the strongest magician she's ever known. Embarrassed, Alec accepts her words, and the two share a moment that recalls their old adventures. Not long after, Yora's party faces a formidable Hydra. Their knight's weapon proves useless, and though their archer manages to distract it, the situation worsens when the Hydra hurls devastating elemental attacks. Yora blocks a fireball with ice and a lightning strike with earth magic, but exhaustion overtakes her. At that desperate moment, Alec steps forward, weaving all 5 elements into a single overwhelming spell that obliterates the Hydra. Their victory sets a new record at level 68, filling the party with excitement for even greater challenges ahead. Thus ends Episode 1, Alec's fall from the court, his reunion with Yora, and the rebirth of his true power as part of Lasting Period. They were recognized as the most outstanding group of students the Academy had produced in years. Even their instructor, Rosie, could sense that there was something special about these four. They worked in perfect harmony, their teamwork unmatched by anyone else. After every dungeon run, they would return battered and bruised, yet smiling proudly, having just shattered the long-standing record by conquering the 68th level dungeon. The previous best team had only made it to floor 32, so their feat was nothing short of legendary. When graduation day finally arrived, Instructor Rosie announced the final rankings. Rain placed 4th, Craw came in 3rd, Yora was the runner-up, and Alec topped the class as valedictorian, achieving the highest scores the Academy had seen in ages. The group was full of joy and optimism that day, teasing Rosie one last time and getting scolded for it, just like old times. As they left the Academy together, the other students watched with envy, convinced they were witnessing the birth of a future legendary adventuring party. But fate had other plans. Alec soon revealed that he didn't wish to continue as an adventurer. Instead, he wanted to become a court magician. His teammates were shocked at first, though they understood that being a royal mage offered a much easier and more stable life. Even so, they supported his decision wholeheartedly, with Yora vowing that someday they'd fight side by side again. Now, that promise has finally come full circle. In the present day, Yora and Alec are seen celebrating together at a tavern. After just one drink, Yora becomes completely wasted, angrily complaining about not being allowed to explore deeper dungeons before dozing off on the bench. Alec smiles, remembering how little she's changed since their academy days. Like a gentleman, he places his jacket over her shoulders to keep her warm. However, a man inside the bar takes offense, mocking Alec for being soft. The man, clearly one of those self-proclaimed alpha types, sneers and lifts his bottle to strike Alec. But with a flicker of mana, Alec calmly raises a shield, blocking the attack effortlessly. The man laughs, oddly pleased to have gotten his attention, and admits that he knew Alec was a court magician. He says it's surprising to see someone so elite wandering around among adventurers. Then, unexpectedly, the man pulls an adventurer's pass from his pocket and places it on the table as an apology, but with a challenge. Alec must demonstrate his magic to earn it. Before Alec can respond, a groggy Yora wakes up and blurts out that the man is none other than the guildmaster. Alec is stunned. Why would the guildmaster personally hand him a pass? The guildmaster, who introduces himself as Levy, casually leads them to an underground training area where he tests teams aspiring to move up in rank. Though Yora protests that Alec has been drinking, Alec insists he still has enough mana to fight. The name Levy suddenly clicks in Alec's mind. This was the same legendary mage who once led an S-ranked party. Levy just laughs it off, saying those days are long gone, before explaining the simple terms of his test. Levy's only condition is simple. Alec must prove his strength through magic. With that, the two prepare to spar. Alec opens the duel by casting a powerful thunderbolt spell, sending crackling lightning across the arena. Levy, however, dodges it with effortless precision and retaliates using water magic, launching orbs of pressurized water toward his opponent. Alec narrowly evades the barrage and quickly realizes that Levy has a significant advantage in range, forcing him to rethink his approach. Deciding to switch tactics, Alec charges in, aiming to turn the fight into close-quarters combat. But to his surprise, Levy doesn't retreat. Instead, he slams his fists into the ground, casting reinforcement magic that dramatically boosts his speed and strength. In a flash, he closes the distance, sidestepping Alec at the last moment and circling him in a blur before landing a crushing punch. Alec blocks it with a mana shield, but the impact shatters the barrier completely, sending him flying into a nearby wall. Levy smirks, impressed. Not bad, most people wouldn't even survive that, he says. Alec, covered in dust but unfazed, steps forward and admits that Levy truly lives up to his reputation as an S-rank adventurer. His calm attitude catches Levy off guard, who expected him to be shaken. But Alec simply laughs, saying he keeps forgetting he's no longer restricted by the rigid rules of court magicians, those who are limited mostly to defensive spells. Now free from those boundaries, he can finally fight without restraint. Levy grins, intrigued. Then show me what you've really got. Alec raises his staff, which transforms into a glowing magical blade. Levy hurls another wave of water orbs, but this time Alec slips past the first and slices through the second. Pretending to rush in, Alec baits Levy into counterattacking. It's a trap. As Levy powers himself up and lunges forward, Alec detonates a thunder spell at point-blank range, then dashes through the smoke, cutting past him with blinding speed. Levy freezes for a moment, impressed by Alec's strength and technique. "You really are something else," he admits. But the fight isn't over. Levy activates his secret weapon, a pair of enchanted gauntlets forged with dragon scales. The air crackles as his power skyrockets, and he charges forward, striking with earth-shattering force. Alec dodges, but the impact leaves a massive crater in the ground. Refusing to give up, Alec retaliates with a lightning surge, but Levy shrugs it off as if it were nothing. The guildmaster smashes through the electrical assault and swings again, forcing Alec to block with another mana shield, one that barely holds as he's pushed backward by sheer brute strength. Levy's gauntlets glow, repairing any minor damage he's taken, making him even harder to wear down. Realizing a drawn-out fight will only favor Levy, Alec goes on the offensive, unleashing a flurry of slashes and spells. Levy deflects each attack with ease, mocking him to try harder. Alec fires back with his own taunt, which irritates the guildmaster enough to make him overextend. Seizing the moment, Alec ducks under a massive punch that pulverizes the wall behind him, then spins and prepares his next move, determined to finally turn the battle in his favor. Alec and Levy's battle rages on as both push themselves to their limits. Alec manages to block one of Levy's powerful strikes and seizes the moment to counter with what he believes will be the finishing blow. But to his surprise, the guildmaster barely flinches, absorbing the hit as if it were nothing. With a grin, Levy raises both hands and slams them down with tremendous force, filling the room with a blinding cloud of dust and debris. When the smoke clears, Alec is still standing, mostly unharmed. Determined to end it, he charges forward again. But just as he's about to strike, his staff flickers. His mana completely runs dry. The weapon loses its glow, and Alec collapses to the ground, unconscious from exhaustion. Dora rushes to his side, quickly casting healing magic to stabilize him. At that moment, Rain walks into the training arena, teasing Levy for going all out against a lower-ranked mage. Levy scoffs, saying he was simply testing Alec's limits, and that the young magician had already passed with flying colors. Rain picks Alec up and carries him to a nearby room to rest. As Alec sleeps, Rain sits nearby, Rose, reminiscing about their old days at the academy. Their quiet moment is interrupted when the guild's receptionist bursts in, urgently calling for the guildmaster. Livy grabs her by the arm and leaves to deal with the situation, while Rain cracks open a bottle of booze and calls for Yora. Yora begins explaining everything that happened since Alec returned, from his training to his duel with Livy. As Rain listens, anger builds up inside him. He finds out Alec's former party had mistreated him, forcing him to do all their chores, banning him from using offensive magic, and even forbidding him from carrying a weapon. The realization infuriates Rain, and he crushes the bottle in his hand. The sound wakes Alec. He's surprised to see Rain there, but Yora cheerfully announces that Levy granted them the adventurer's pass. Alec smiles, excited that they can finally challenge the higher-level dungeons together again. But Rain isn't satisfied. He leans forward and tells them that before anything else, they need revenge, specifically against the arrogant prince and his former party who wronged Alec. His plan? Sneak into the royal palace and beat them senseless. Alec quickly shuts that idea down, reminding him that fighting other adventurers is forbidden. Yora agrees, urging Rain to calm down. Alec places a hand on his friend's shoulder and says that simply enjoying their new adventures together will be enough. He's long since moved past what happened at the royal court. Rain pauses, then smirks as an idea hits him. Instead of revenge, they'll aim higher. "Let's become the strongest party in the world," he declares. That way, the prince and his crew will have no choice but to acknowledge them. And if their kingdom ever ends up needing help, they'll be the ones begging for it. The thought of rejecting them on that day feels far more satisfying than revenge. Alec laughs and agrees. It's the perfect plan. Meanwhile, in another part of the guild, chaos brews. A badly injured S-ranked adventurer named Krista struggles to breathe as the receptionist frantically wraps her wounds. Levy looks grim. If even the top-ranked party was defeated, the entire guild could be in danger. Krista gasps out that her team is still trapped and needs immediate rescue. Without hesitation, Livy calls an emergency meeting, summoning all the A-ranked adventurers. He announces a mission to rescue Krista's party from the 64th dungeon floor. Back in Alec's room, he's greeted by Kra, who he hasn't seen in ages. Her dual personalities have matured since their academy days. When she hears he skipped the meeting, Alec admits he's not ranked high enough to attend. She laughs and uses a high-level healing spell, instantly restoring his strength, leaving Alec wondering why Krista wasn't treated that way earlier. Moments later, Rain and Yora burst into the room, brimming with excitement. They tell Alec about the rescue operation and explain that the dungeon floor they're heading to blocks all magic use, meaning potions are their only lifeline. The S-ranked team was completely wiped out, and Krista barely escaped to get help. Alec asks Kra if she's comfortable taking on such a mission, since her specialty is healing magic. She snaps back, annoyed, saying she was against it from the start, but Rain overruled her. The two immediately start bickering, as usual, until Yora interrupts and says it should be Alec's decision whether they go or not, since he'll be facing the boss directly. Alec takes a deep breath and agrees. They'll take the mission. Soon after, the four of them stand at the entrance to the massive dungeon. Rain raises his fist, declaring that this will mark the beginning of their legend. And that's where today's story ends. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more epic adventures. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. The group's objective is to reach the stranded party on the 64th floor. Normally, descending through each level would take far too long, but they have an advantage. The guildmaster provided them with a dungeon core, a rare artifact that lets adventurers skip past boss battles up to the level where it was discovered. Since this particular core is the one Krista retrieved, it should allow them to quickly clear a path straight to floor 64. Still, they need to proceed carefully. The floor's guardian is rumored to be an undead creature, meaning they'll be relying heavily on Alc's offensive magic to finish the fight. Because of that, the team tells him to save as much energy as possible until the final confrontation. Alc hesitates, asking if it's really fine for him to sit out most of the minor battles, but Ornis insists. If Alc exhausts his mana before facing the boss, they'll all be in trouble. Once they teleport to the 64th floor, a swarm of skeletons greets them almost immediately. Ornis charges forward without hesitation, spearing his way through the crowd. Yora hurries after him, wanting to stay close enough to cast defensive buffs, but honestly, it doesn't look like he even needs them. Meanwhile, Alec and Kra follow behind at a slower pace. Alec mentions his surprise that Ornis possesses an artifact similar to Levio's, but Kra clarifies. It's just an ordinary spear enchanted with sharpness and durability. For someone like Ornis, though, that's more than enough. Things start to feel repetitive as Ornis effortlessly wipes out enemy after enemy. Alec asks if he can lend a hand, but Ornis waves him off, determined to clear out the weaker foes himself. As they continue, Alec suddenly senses something lurking nearby. Acting on instinct, he turns and fires a lightning bolt into the darkness. The others stop, startled, and ask what happened. Alec explains that he felt something behind him, and Ornis, trusting his intuition, asks if he can pinpoint it. Though it's invisible, Alc's senses tell him exactly where it is. He conjures a monosword and strikes, revealing the figure of a Grim Reaper. Ornis cheers, impressed that Alc's reflexes and perception haven't dulled. The tone of his comment makes Alc realize Ornis probably knew about these creatures in advance. To be fair, Ornis admits he was aware of the invisible monsters on this floor, but not how to deal with them, so he let Alc figure it out to help build his confidence. It works. Alc feels a rush of pride and gratitude for the team's trust, something he never experienced as a royal court mage. Still, he shouts that keeping that information from him wasn't cool. Kra and Yora also confess that they knew but stayed quiet at Ornis's request, apologizing for it. Kra even tells Alc to vent his frustration on Ornis if he needs to. Alc agrees, but says they'll have a serious talk about it once they're back home. For now, the mission takes priority. As they delve deeper, they encounter an even larger wave of skeletons. Ornis grins. Finally, something that might challenge him. Yora reminds him that this is a rescue mission, not a tournament, but Ornis loves a good fight too much to back down. He tells everyone to stand back while he takes them on alone. This time, Alec refuses to let him. Together, the two advance while Yora casts enhancement spells on them. They make quick work of the enemies, but in their focus, they forget that Yora is terrible in combat and leave her exposed. Thankfully, Cross steps in and saves her just in time. Not wanting to risk it again, Alec orders everyone to stay behind him as he channels a massive area-wide thunderbolt spell, clearing the remaining foes in an instant. With the path secure, the group regroups to continue forward. Before they move, though, Ornis curiously asks why Alec's been relying so heavily on lightning magic. Back in their academy days, Alec used to use a variety of creative spells. Alec pauses, thinking back to his days with the reckless prince who always dove into danger, forcing Alec to constantly clean up his messes. Somewhere along the way, Lightning Bolt became his go-to. It's fast, reliable, and always gets the job done. Just then, a chilling roar echoes from deep within the dungeon, sending shivers through the group. Yora immediately recognizes it. It has to be the floor boss, and they need to reach it fast. Since Ornis is the fastest among them, they decide he'll take the lead. Yora casts a speed boost on everyone, and with a flash of energy, Ornis dashes ahead while the rest follow close behind. Even after seeing it countless times, Alec still finds Ornis's speed astonishing, especially when Yora's magic enhances it. Before long, they catch up to him, only to find him sitting casually at the edge of a cliff, gazing down below. When Alec looks to see what's happening, he spots a man being chased by a massive monster. The man frantically yells for Ornis to help him, but Ornis doesn't seem too eager. When Alec asks what's going on, Ornis explains that the guy is Loki, the support mage from the party they came to rescue. Apparently, while most of the group from Roma are decent people, Loki's obnoxious personality makes him hard to like. Loki continues screaming for help, even threatening to haunt Ornis's dreams if he dies, but Ornis seems completely unbothered. Then Loki suddenly trips and falls. Alec suggests helping him since the monster's about to strike, but the others explain that Loki isn't actually in danger. This is just how he fights. Moments later, the monster steps right onto a hidden magic circle. Loki smirks and a blazing pillar of fire erupts through the creature's torso. Alec quickly realizes that Loki must have laid traps in advance, and the others confirm it. For all his arrogance, Loki is a tactical genius. The monster keeps setting off more of Loki's traps, each explosion making Loki laugh harder at its stupidity. But his amusement doesn't last long. He runs out of traps before finishing the job, leaving himself completely exposed as the enraged creature charges straight for him. Just before it can crush him, Alec and the team intervene. Ornis grabs Loki and drags him to safety, while the rest engage the monster to buy them time. When the creature lunges at Alec, Yora quickly throws up a magical barrier, blocking the blow. But then the monster shifts its attention back to Ornis and Loki, clearly furious at the one responsible for its injuries. Realizing they can't outrun it in this terrain, Ornis makes a split-second decision. He dashes straight under the beast, scoops up Loki, and hurls him toward Krazia, shouting for her to keep him safe. Yora tells Krazia to get Loki up to higher ground while Ornis prepares to go all in. Now free of distractions, Ornis calls for every buff Yora can muster. She obliges, stacking every enhancement spell she knows as Ornis charges head-on. He deftly evades the monster's first strike, leaps into the air, and drives his spear right beneath its eye, but the blow isn't strong enough to take it down. The monster swats him away, slamming him into the ground. Yora rushes to his side, throwing up another barrier just as the monster's foot comes crashing down. Her shield trembles under the impact. It won't last long. She yells for Alec to hurry up with his spell. Meanwhile, up on the cliff, Loki finally catches his breath and realizes who's fighting below. He can hardly believe it. Alec, the legendary prodigy mage, is back. He's heard all the rumors about his incredible magic, but seeing it firsthand leaves him stunned. As Alec spreads out his arms, 20 magic circles ignite around him in midair. Loki gapes. Most mages struggle to control even 3 or 5 spells at once, but Alec is effortlessly maintaining 20. The monster, sensing the danger, charges at him to interrupt the casting. Ornis intercepts, buying Alc the seconds he needs. The moment Alc finishes, he releases a devastating cascade of lightning bolts that tear through the dungeon, blasting the monster again and again. For the grand finale, he channels all his power into one concentrated thunder strike, but the monster narrowly dodges it. "Brace yourselves!" Alc shouts as the beast rears back for a counterattack. Ornis signals Krazia, who draws her bow and rains down a volley of arrows, slowing the creature's movements. Yora follows up with binding magic, locking it in place. Seeing the perfect opening, Ornis readies his spear, charges forward, and hurls it straight through the monster's head, finally bringing the floor boss down for good. Just when they think it's finally over, the monster suddenly stirs, clinging to life and preparing one last desperate strike aimed straight at Alc. But that proves to be its biggest mistake. Alc calmly raises his hand, a faint glow surrounding him. This is the perfect opportunity to use a spell he learned long ago from his master, a spell that only he has ever successfully mastered: reflection magic. The monster's attack hurtles forward, but instead of hitting its mark, the energy rebounds at full power, detonating in a massive explosion that engulfs the creature completely. When the smoke clears, the beast is barely hanging on. Ornis wastes no time, leaping in and splitting the monster's skull clean in two with his spear, finally putting an end to the battle. As the dust settles, Loki walks up to the group, clapping his hands with a sly grin. He congratulates them on their teamwork and especially praises Alc for his extraordinary display of magic. He admits he's heard countless stories about Alc, the famed royal court magician who once defeated a hydra with a single spell. Alc smiles modestly but corrects him, explaining that he's no longer part of the royal court. Loki is stunned by the news, calling the higher-ups idiots for letting someone of Alc's caliber go. Still, he expresses genuine gratitude for their rescue. Then he mentions something that catches everyone off guard. His team is still fighting another boss. The group is stunned to hear there's a second floor boss. Loki quickly explains that when his party arrived, they discovered two bosses guarding this level. They couldn't handle both simultaneously, so Loki volunteered to lure the dumber one, the one they just defeated, away, leaving his team to deal with the stronger opponent. That one, he says, is a knight clad in black armor. Considering that this floor is overrun with undead, it's likely a possessed suit of armor, rather than a living creature. If that's true, then physical attacks won't be much use against it. Their best chance will be relying on Alc's magic. Loki hands Alc a cross-shaped artifact, explaining that it's called Shwar. He says he can tell from Alc's movements that he's not just a powerful mage, but also an experienced close-range fighter. Someone who deliberately makes himself look like both the easiest target and the biggest threat at the same time to manipulate his opponents. Alc is impressed that Loki managed to figure all that out just from a few minutes of observation. Loki just smirks and says that reading people is part of his job as a strategist. Then, with a mischievous glint in his eye, he offers Alc the artifact for free, but only on one condition. Krazia immediately grows suspicious, knowing Loki too well to believe he'd hand over something so valuable without strings attached. Loki waves off their concern, saying it's nothing too serious. He just wants Alc to fight the second boss without using any magic. Everyone protests at once, calling the idea insane. Expecting a mage to take on a boss without magic sounds like suicide, but Loki insists he has a plan. Deception, he explains, is his specialty. The Death Knight is expecting them to unleash powerful spells, so attacking in the exact opposite way will completely catch it off guard. And with that, the screen fades to black. This marks the end of episode 3. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. While Alec and his companions were battling for their lives in one dungeon, the prince and his group found themselves trapped in another one on the opposite side of the continent. But unlike Alec's skilled party, who moved with precision and confidence through the tunnels, slaying monsters far stronger than themselves, the prince's group looked completely out of their depth, frantically running from a swarm of giant caterpillar creatures. The prince couldn't understand it. Just a few months ago, these weak monsters would have been nothing more than target practice for him. Yet now, they were pushing him and his team to the brink. He shouted at his mage to cast a spell, but but the terrified girl froze in fear and burst into tears. Furious, the prince called them all useless cowards and charged forward alone, vowing to end the fight with a single swing of his sword. However, when he struck the creature's thick hide, it bounced off harmlessly. Shocked, the prince barely had time to react before the monster smacked him hard, sending him crashing to the ground. His teammates scrambled to grab him and flee. Carried on one of their backs, the prince couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. His body felt heavy, his sword awkward in his hands, and every movement took effort. That's when he remembered. The moment everything started going downhill was right after he expelled Alec from his party. Alec had been their court magician, using support magic so seamlessly that they never realized how much stronger it made them. They believed their strength was natural, but it had all been Alec's doing. Still, the prince refused to admit that. Instead, he convinced himself that Alec must have cursed him in revenge. When he finally returned to the palace, the royal physicians treated his injuries, and he immediately summoned his personal mage, Vogan, to identify the supposed curse. After a thorough inspection, Vogan informed him there was no curse at all. The prince, in disbelief, demanded he check again. There was no way he should be struggling with a level 30 monster when he had cleared floors beyond level 40. After a pause, Vogan explained that the issue wasn't a curse, but the absence of support magic. The prince scoffed at the idea, claiming that such magic was for weaklings and beneath someone of his caliber. Vogan bit his tongue, knowing it was pointless to argue, and calmly asked if Alec hadn't warned them that the 30th floor would be difficult since reinforcement magic didn't function there. The prince dismissed the idea immediately, saying that Alec was just a low-born peasant who knew nothing. Vogan, however, knew better. He revealed that Alec had once been part of a legendary team that broke all previous records, reaching the 68th floor before graduation. The prince laughed mockingly, insisting no commoner could achieve something so great, and brushed it off as a fairy tale for the weak. Vogan sighed, realizing there was no reasoning with him. Before he could say more, a royal messenger entered and announced that the king demanded the prince's presence in court concerning Alec, the former court mage. The prince and Vogan headed to the throne room, where the king sat solemnly. The prince asked why he'd been summoned. The king began by asking if he remembered a court mage named Elders. The prince shook his head. He'd been too young back then. The king explained that years ago, a nobleman named Elders had served as the royal mage. He had come from a powerful family, which made his appointment easy, but unlike others before him, Elders wasn't afraid to challenge the kingdom's unjust traditions. He often spoke out against discrimination and urged the king to reform the system. Angered by such defiance, the king had stripped Elders of his title and banished him, erasing his family name from the records. Upon hearing this, the prince laughed, saying the man got what he deserved. No one, not even a noble, had the right to talk back to a king. The king, looking at his son with disappointment, quietly replied that Elders had been different. After being stripped of his title, Elders enrolled in the Royal Magic Academy as a regular commoner. Despite starting from nothing, he quickly rose to the top of his class, graduating as the Academy's valedictorian. His remarkable talent earned him the position of court mage once again, but this time, not through noble connections, but purely on merit. For years after his return, Elders kept urging the king to change how the kingdom treated commoners, insisting that talent could come from anyone, regardless of their birth. He even reminded the king that a commoner had once saved his life. But the king ignored his pleas. Then, one day, Elders simply vanished without a trace. The prince, clearly annoyed, couldn't understand why his father was telling him all this old nonsense. That's when the king revealed his true reason. He said it was time to reform the kingdom's traditions, that they needed gifted individuals like Alec if they wanted to move forward. The prince was stunned, calling Alec nothing more than a useless peasant who didn't deserve recognition. But the king presented a torn parchment Alec had left behind, an intricate map of the entire 30th floor, detailing every monster, trap, and multiple strategies for clearing it. The king explained that only someone who had conquered that floor countless times could write with such precision. Hearing that, the prince was speechless. He protested that asking help from a commoner went against everything his father had ever taught him. The king lowered his head in regret, admitting that his old ways were wrong and needed to change. From that moment on, he declared, people would be judged by their skills and strength, not by their social standing. The prince stood frozen, disbelief written across his face. Finally, he excused himself from the court, claiming he felt unwell. Meanwhile, back in the main dungeon, Loki and the group were busy strategizing for the upcoming boss battle. Loki instructed Alec to use only the sword he'd given him, no magic at all. Alec was confused, pointing out that the floor boss was immune to physical attacks, so a sword would be useless. That's when Raja caught on to Loki's plan. He wanted to trick the monster into believing Alec was a mere swordsman instead of a mage, making it less cautious. However, she questioned whether that would even work, since monsters usually attacked without thinking. Loki simply smirked, wagging his finger. He explained that this particular monster was different. It was intelligent and capable of strategic thought. More than that, it was also a sword master. That revelation shocked Alec, but it also sparked his curiosity. He couldn't wait to see such a creature for himself. With their plan in place, they prepared for the final fight. The boss chamber was still far away, but Loki had a shortcut: teleportation. Yora panicked, reminding everyone that teleportation spells were top secret, restricted to royal officials. But Rain wasn't surprised. If anyone could steal something that classified, it was Loki. Loki began inscribing a teleportation circle while Alec whispered to Yora, suggesting that if anything went wrong, they could just blame Loki for using illegal magic. Yora admitted Loki wasn't exactly trustworthy, but he was dependable. 2 years earlier, he'd led a raid through a high-ranking dungeon without losing a single member. That reassurance eased Alec's doubts. He smiled, gripped his sword, and stood ready. The final showdown was about to begin. Once Loki completed the magic circle, everyone stepped inside. In an instant, the ground lit up with a brilliant purple glow. Yora couldn't believe her eyes. Loki had actually pulled off a teleportation spell. "Get ready," Loki warned. "We're heading straight into the boss room." The light flashed, and in the next second, they landed, right on top of Rain. As they got their bearings, an enormous dark knight stood before them, locked in battle against another group of 3 adventurers. One of the mages from that group yelled for her teammate to run and fetch help, insisting they needed a rank A mage or higher to stand a chance of surviving. The girl sprinted off while the other fighter charged the knight, only for his blow to be effortlessly blocked. The mage hurled a burst of fire magic, but it barely left a mark on the knight's black armor. Realizing he was completely outmatched, the elf mage hesitated. Before he could plan their next move, Rain shot forward at blinding speed, driving his spear toward the monster. The knight parried and shoved him back. Rain grinned. This was the kind of fight he lived for. Alec seized the moment and tried a sneak attack from behind, but the knight leapt aside, dodging the strike with uncanny reflexes. In an instant, the boss turned his focus to Alec and Rain, engaging them in a fierce exchange of blades and blows. The air rang with the sound of steel, each hit heavier than the last. Meanwhile, Loki and Kra helped the injured adventurers retreat to safety, fending off reinforcements along the way. The fight raged on. The knight's relentless attacks began to wear Alec and Rain down. Thinking fast, Rain devised a trap. He lunged with his spear, and just as expected, the knight jumped to dodge, but Rain used another spearhead to pin its cloak to the ground, freezing it midair. That was the opening Alec needed. With perfect timing, Alec dashed forward and landed a clean, decisive strike, decapitating the knight in a single blow. For a moment, silence filled the room. But before anyone could celebrate, the knight's body began to move again. It rose, headless, and advanced toward them. Alec's eyes widened. This wasn't just any monster. This was a headless rider, and the creature they'd slain earlier had been its mount. The undead knight exploded into motion, attacking with terrifying speed. Alec barely managed to block the hit that could have wiped them all out. Rain jumped in beside him, and together they fought tooth and nail, pushing the creature back. But then, the knight picked up its severed head and slammed it back onto its shoulders. A pulse of dark energy rippled through the room as it let out an unholy roar. The next swing sent Alec crashing into a wall, his shield barely saving him thanks to Yora's quick reinforcement spell. Coughing, Alec downed a healing potion and rejoined the battle while Rain caught his breath. They fought on, exhausted but determined, as Loki quietly set his plan into motion. Then, at the perfect moment, Loki stepped into the fray. The entire chamber glowed with a purple aura, magic pulsing through the air. The knight froze. It could sense the presence of a mage, the one thing capable of killing it. The Dark Knight dashed forward at incredible speed, slashing Loki across the chest before Alec could react. Loki collapsed, blood spilling, only for his body to flicker and vanish. It was an illusion all along. The knight had walked right into Loki's trap. Suddenly, giant icicles erupted from the ground, freezing its movements. Rain appeared behind it using a teleport trap, stabbing deep before retreating. The little fighter girl from before jumped back into the fight as well, joining the assault. The knight, enraged, broke free and scaled the wall like a beast, aiming straight for Kriya. But Loki wasn't about to let that happen. He intercepted the attack, blocking it with a glowing magic blade. Yora cast a reinforcement spell, summoning chains of light that wrapped around the knight, restraining it completely. Though Loki wasn't much of a frontline fighter, he held out long enough for the spell to take effect. Exhausted, he collapsed to the ground, breathing heavily. Looking toward Alec with a faint smile, Loki whispered, "Now, end this with your magic." And just like that, the screen fades to black. Remember to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next part.